On the Foundation for California Community Colleges Fusion system, there's a planning module for planning for new projects. For MiraCosta, there are several projects identified here in this list in the database. So Fusion is used for managing existing space, but also planning for new space. Within the planning module, there is a new project identified in an initial planning proposal or initial project proposal for the instructional building 3, the athletic building at MiraCosta. This is the document in PDF format that outlines the justification and cost and initial square footage calculations and types of spaces that are being planned for in the building. In the Fusion database, this looks like this, where you can actually see individual spaces by categories and the number of spaces, square footage, room number, room name, and net square footage of each of those spaces. This does not include any support spaces, the corridors and restrooms and support facilities, and the gross area of the building. So it has to be added to this, which we have. We've added it in the ONUMA system. So in the ONUMA system, we're reading from the Fusion server, and we're using this data in the Fusion server being fed directly into the ONUMA system to create this first version of a programming requirement for these two buildings. There are two buildings on the MiraCosta site. The blue area outlines the area that we're going to be studying. The red buildings are new. There's an instructional building 3, which is an athletic building. There's a maintenance and operations building here on the north side, and there's also a new parking area with solar photovoltaics. In the ONUMA interface, you can do all kinds of reporting and turning things on and off. So you can, for example, turn off the background and look at the plan, look at the building, and you can actually even see, if you turn off the proposed building in red, you can see the existing gymnasium below that is going to be scheduled to be demolished. In the meeting with HMC the other day, there was a comment made from HMC's planning team that the community college is planning to start construction of the new gymnasium adjacent to the existing one, and then phase it, and then demolish the existing gymnasium. So there's some planning that needs to go on over here. There's an existing bridge over to the main campus, and that's kind of the siting elements of this area. And you can turn on the background again and see the HMC plan with a new parking area and the activity fields being moved more to the north. So new parking to the south, new building here. And these buildings, in the edit mode, if you've duplicated the scheme and created a version for yourself, you'll actually have this building. You can actually move it around. You can reshape it directly in the ONUMA system. And you can also open the building up. If you double click on the building and click on this right here, you actually get zoom into the plan of the building. The plan is a blocking and stacking model that is imported or connected to the Fusion programming data. So you'll see these spaces here. There's a gymnasium. These are all blocks. They can be resized as well too. And you can actually turn elements of it on and off to look at different space names and numbers and square footage. And with that, you can actually even reshape a space. So if it's locked, you can actually lock the area and reshape the size of the space, for example, and say we really want to fit this here. And this support area, this gross area is basically including all the circulation and support spaces needed for this building on this floor, including the outer wall, for example. So this is an area that, as you're going through the design, you're going to have to decide how much space is actually needed. There's 2 locker rooms. These are all the net areas, and 3 dance studios and equipment storage on the first floor. On the second floor, from an owner's perspective, it was a very quick blocking and stacking model with the assumptions of where spaces can go. So the design, as a designer, you can go through and actually adjust this, either directly in the ONUMA system like this, or you can start to export this out to other applications as you start to resolve it more. So the same thing here. You can actually say, okay, we need to have to lock the space so it maintains a square footage, and say let's go like that. This is an estimated area for circulation, and then there's a fitness training room. So obviously this needs some design, but this is kind of the kit of parts and the pieces that are needed, showing how many offices and conference rooms, and this defines the design. And you can continue to refine it directly in here if you'd like, or if you export this out, then you'll be able to continue to work in other applications. The most important piece is if you imagine this is the programming requirement model of the owner. These spaces actually have numbers on them, so we need to maintain that classroom number 9150. So if you're going through the design exercise, we're going to evaluate the designs coming back to make sure all these elements are in place. And this is a challenge that a lot of owners face. This is obviously a smaller number of rooms. I would imagine if this was a hospital, but the same issues occur even on smaller projects. Do we have all the programming elements that are needed? Is it being designed with those elements? And what is the resulting design coming back? So this is going to be the control model that defines the program requirements for the owner. In the report section up here, you can actually start doing all kinds of calculations on square footage and rolling areas up. Let's say we want to roll it up by department. These departments are defined by the classification in the Fusion system. So if we sort it by department, you can start to see how many square feet of classrooms and where they are in the building. So this is just for this athletic building, and you see the gross area for the circulation and support areas down here. So these numbers are automatically generated from the system. They're maintained in here, and the next step would be if you want to go out into other applications, you can either export. So on the lower right there's an export function, and with that export there are options to export. You can actually create an Excel file of all these spaces, or take it out to Google Earth, or take it out to IFC for other BIM applications, take it out to Revit, ArchiCAD, or SketchUp. So for example, going out to SketchUp, we say SketchUp and export it by department color codes, and it creates what's called a BIM.xml file, and that BIM.xml file is available to import into SketchUp. So if we have the BIM.xml file, actually right here, there's the XML file that was just saved, and if I open up SketchUp, there's a plugin that's available for free on the front page, on the Studio page of the ONUMA system. You open up a blank SketchUp model like this, and you go File, Import, and there's that XML file. Let's import that. You choose ONUMA BIM XML if you've installed the plugin, the free plugin. It shows up as a BIM XML file. Import that in. It changes the location to Miracosta and Oceanside. It actually brings in even the footprint of the site and the study area. The building is floating up because we have the building at the right elevation. The site is not set, it's just set as being flat. But the most important thing here is that you can actually see the spaces, and if we turn some of the layers off, you can actually start to, let's check the site and the sketch layer, and now we're left with that. So these spaces actually have attributes associated with them. You can actually start to turn things off in SketchUp and actually get to individual elements, and even edit these and import them back into the ONUMA system. So the intent here is this blocking and stacking model identifies all of the spaces that were identified in the owner's blocking and stacking data from Fusion, and now in SketchUp we can actually start to see how those might be laid out and designed with. So you're getting a massing model that can be worked with directly in SketchUp, and the same would happen in Revit. If you take this out to Revit, you'd have the elements inside the same elements in Revit as well. And that's really the intent, is that you're taking these programming requirements from the ONUMA system that came from Fusion, working with that, designing it, and submitting it back into the ONUMA system. So we want to see all these space numbers making their way back if you're working in SketchUp, Revit, or ArchiCAD. There's a lot more to this, but this is the basic functionality of getting programming requirements out from the ONUMA system, and the same is available for this athletic building and also the maintenance operation building here on the north side. So the same process would be followed there as well.